Good evening. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Wilmette Zoning Board of Appeals. Ms. Roberts, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Boyer.
Here.
Mr. Colang.
Here.
Ms. Norick.
Present.
Mr. Robke.
Here.
Mr. Schneider.
Here.
Mr. Sermon.
Here.
Chairman Duffy.
Present. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you new to our proceedings, the purpose of this board is to hear evidence on applications for variances from our zoning ordinance and on applications for special use. Based upon the evidence we hear this evening, we will make a recommendation to the Village Board of Trustees as to whether the applications that come before us should be granted or denied. We will vote to recommend granting or denying each application for variation based upon whether the application meets the standards of review set forth in Section 5.4.f of our village ordinance. Applications for special use will be considered based upon whether the standards of review set forth in Section 5.3.e of our village ordinance are met. The Village Board of Trustees will consider the recommendations we make this evening at their next regularly scheduled meeting on May 22nd. Our recommendations to the board are advisory only. The Village Board has the final say on all applications and will make its own determination as to whether to grant or deny them. The Village Board is not legally bound by our recommendations. There's one small exception to this rule. If this board makes a negative recommendation with respect to an application, in order for the Village Board of Trustees to approve that application, a supermajority of 5 Village Board members must vote to approve it, rather than a simple majority of 4. There is one other small peculiarity to our proceedings of which you should be aware. This board does not operate by a majority vote. We operate instead by a tyranny of 4. In other words, no matter how many board members are present on a given evening, in order to get a positive recommendation from this board, an application must receive 4 affirmative votes. If you wish to request a continuance tonight, our next zoning board meeting available for the next available date for any applicant who would like to request a continuance is
June 2nd.
There is no penalty for asking for a continuance. No such request will be held against you when your case is eventually heard. If you wish to ask for a continuance, however, you must do so at the beginning of your presentation before making any substantive arguments as to the merits of your case. Please also be aware that if you request a continuance, there is no guarantee as to how many board members will be present on the evening to which your case is continued. The cases we shall hear this evening will be heard in the order set forth on the pre-printed agenda located on the table near the door where you first came in. When your case is called, please proceed to the podium, state your name and address, and tell us exactly why your application meets the standards of review that are applicable to it. Each member of this board is a longtime resident of the village and has visited your property during the past week. In addition, we have received from village staff these green booklets containing all written information that you have submitted in support of your application, as well as any other correspondence that the village has received. Accordingly, it is not necessary that you repeat what you have already stated in writing. Please just hit the high points with particular attention to why you believe your application meets the standards of review. After the applicant has had a chance to speak, we will open the podium to others who wish to speak either for or against the application. Everyone will be permitted to have their say, though we would ask that you keep your comments as short and to the point as possible. After we have heard all oral presentations, I will close the evidence and the members of the board will discuss what they have heard and take a vote. Once the evidence is closed, no further testimony on an application may be offered. The only people entitled to speak during that part of the proceeding will be the members of the board. This meeting is a legal proceeding, and all testimony tonight must be given under oath. If you are here and planning to testify tonight, I would ask that you raise your right hand at this time and be sworn. Do you swear or affirm that you will tell the truth in the testimony that you're about to give? If so, please say, I do. Thank you. Ms. Roberts, will you please call the first case?
Our first case on the agenda is 2017 C65, 1020 Forest Avenue. This case was previously continued to tonight, and it is requested to be tabled again, this time to June 6th. The applicants are working on their traffic study, and we are confident that we will be able to go ahead with the June 6th date.
Excellent. Do I have a motion to continue this case?
Motion to continue.
Thank you, Mr. Colon. Do I have a second? Second, Mr. Boyer. Are all in favor?
Aye.
Aye as well. When you are ready, Ms. Roberts.
Our next case is 2018 Z9, 1163 Ramona Road. This is a request for a 2-foot fence height variation and a fence openness variation to permit the installation of a 6-foot tall solid fence in a front yard.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you. Jane Hall, 1163 Ramona, and I'm requesting to close the yard from the existing fence to the corner of my screen porch. I cannot pull it back farther because there's a existing brick patio there, and it would intersect the screen porch. I'd like it 6 feet because the existing fence is 6 feet, and I have 2 German Shepherds. I could make it not a solid fence. There's a lot of tree cover there. I just didn't want my dogs to bark at everyone going by. There's a lot of foot traffic there, a lot of dog traffic.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? None? Mr. Boyer, I'm going to coax one out of you here. Come on. I know you got a question.
Hold on. Caught me flat-footed. So the fence runs from the southwest corner? Is that right? Southwest corner all the way in the back?
Sorry. The existing fence.
The existing fence.
It's on
So
the
it runs
south
the
side, yeah.
length of the neighbor's property line?
Correct.
Well, it stops a little shy of the front yard setback. It stops a little bit, it stops a little bit west of their porch, well, depending upon how you measure that. So the fence doesn't go all the way down the side yard. Goes from the rear corner to about the front of the house.
So Lisa, can I ask you a question? If we were comparing it to that property that we looked at 2 weeks ago, they had the fence in the front yard setback. This is in the side yard, correct? Or what is this considered because of the orientation of the property? Is this considered the front yard? Oh, yeah, in the front yard.
Yeah.
So this is considered the front yard.
Right, the front yard setback that's required is 57 feet, and that corner of the house is at 54. So the fence is, kind of on an angle towards the street. So at least some of the fence is landing within that 57-foot front yard setback, maybe not all of it.
But if it was at 57, it would be okay?
57.01.
Okay, so just 3 feet.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Are there any other questions?
So does this property, it has 2 front yards?
I'm on a corner.
I know,
so
I do know you're on a corner,
The main part
right.
of the house actually faces Illinois,
Right,
the front drive,
right.
but the address is Ramona, so I guess that's why it's front on the.
Well, the lot, the way that we define where the front yard is the shorter of the two would be the front yard. So this along Illinois Road is really a side yard,
Okay, so that's considered.
even though
the
the
side
house
yard.
is oriented that way.
Yeah, okay.
Nothing else?
So is it going to align with the porch itself?
I think it actually will angle a little bit into the old fence, the existing fence.
Oh, okay.
There's kind of a nice little break between a lot of bushes. You won't even see this from the street when the leaves are out. And the neighbors have a storage shed and whatnot there, and their driveway comes right up there.
And you have a fence along the other part of the property,
Along the back?
along the back and the west also?
No, that's part of my request, but it's not a variance.
Oh, I see.
I'm going to close that too.
Oh, okay.
Any other questions? No, everybody else set? All right, I'm going to see if there's anybody in the audience that'd like to speak either for or against this case. Seeing no one, I'm going to close the evidence. You can have a seat, and I'm going to ask if there's a member of the board who'd like to make the motion here. Mr. Boyer, thank you.
In regards to case number 2018Z19, I move to recommend granting a request for a 2-foot fence height variation and a fence openness variation to permit the installation of a 6-foot tall solid fence in a front yard at 1163 Ramona Road in accordance with the plan submitted.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you very much, Ms. Norick. Mr. Boyer, your motion.
Overall, I think it's a minimal request. I don't think it's impacting any of the neighbors. The way I understand this really turns on the orientation of where the house is sited and the lot. I think it meets all the standards for review.
All right, thank you. Ms. Norick? Do you have any other comments?
No, I agree. I think it's the house's unique orientation sort of causes me to feel like this is an appropriate variation.
All right, anybody else? Any other comments?
I'll just use the word hardship. I think the orientation is the hardship of the lot. Agree
Yeah.
with colleagues and support this.
I agree, the hardship is the orientation of the lot, because it appears to be, if you looked at the plan, the side yard, so I can support it.
Yeah. Yeah, I too. This is a minimal request as far as where it sits, because you're getting caught up in side yard, front yard, and the shape of the lot also affects how the house is sited, so I too could support this. So why don't we take a vote?
Mr. Boyer,
Yes.
Ms. Norick,
Yes.
Mr. Colang,
Yes.
Mr. Rubke,
Yes.
Mr. Schneider,
Yes.
Mr. Sermon,
Yes.
Chairman Duffy.
Chair votes yes as well. So that's going to go as a positive recommendation to the village board. The meeting's on the 22nd of this month. My belief, it'll be on the consent agenda, and they won't remove it, and so it'll be voted on very quickly at the beginning of the meeting. But you might want to go to the meeting just in case.
Thank you.
Yeah. If I could have you come up and just sign this document for us, acknowledging your presence and the dates that we have stated. Do you have somebody move to make the chairman, authorize the chairman to prepare the report and recommendation for the zoning board of appeals for case 2018 Z19?
So move. Second.
All right, Mr. Sermon, second. Mr. Colling's motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye as well. Hello.
Our next case is 2018 Z18, 34 Canterbury Court. This is a request for a 2-foot fence height variation to permit the replacement of an 8.5-foot tall solid fence.
Welcome.
I'm Healy Rice. I'm the architect for the project, and I'm here with Marilee and Rick Redmond, who are the homeowners. We are seeking permission to replace an existing double-sided stockade fence that is in poor shape along the west side of the owner's property that currently is 8.5 feet tall. Our unique circumstances here is that our property is the original coach house for the main house that's up on Sheridan Road, and that house is approximately 13 feet higher at its footprint than we are. And so as a result, we have both an aesthetic screening that we're hoping to achieve, as well as a functional purpose for our new fence, because we have a driveway and garage at the bottom that back up to our property, that then we have a water situation that we're trying to mitigate and minimize the exposure to my client's home. So our new proposal, fence-wise, has a concrete retaining wall that will help deflect water away from the owner's house, and then the new wooden fence would sit above that in order to provide the aesthetic improvement. The owners next door are in support of this. They recognize that the fence existing is in poor condition, and as I said, we're really replacing what's existing, so there's no change to what people perceive. It's also to the rear of the property, so it's really very little can be seen from the street side, from Canterbury, and actually people would look over it if they were up on Sheridan Road. So hopefully, I think it's a reasonable request for what a minimal variation.
Quick question. In the letter that was written, throughout it states that the fence is 8 feet high, but then it gets crossed out in a couple places saying that it's 8.5 feet
It's
high?
8.5, yes. The original, the landscape architect had done the initial plans, and then it was recalculated because it is actually 8'6".
So I measured it.
Okay,
Yeah, so did I.
It's not 8'6". It's 7'10" at its highest point.
okay.
And that's at the rear, so that would be the northwest corner, where you've got that about a foot high stone foundation that it sets on. And the rest of the fence is about 6'10" in its entirety.
6'6",
6'6",
which is
yeah.
standard height for a stockade, and I've never seen a 10-foot stockade fence.
Well, it wasn't 10, it would have been 8.
Or 8, I mean, 8.5. So I don't know if who created this drawing, if the landscape architect.
Architect, right.
Yeah. So I think the dimension really is 8'6" shown might be down to the far north end of the fence,
Okay.
possibly. What did you measure, 7'10" there?
Yeah, it's right here.
Oh,
If
okay.
anybody else wants to look at it, I took pictures of it. This corner, these go together.
So the majority of
where
the
I
fence I
measured it.
measured was 6'6".
Sorry, Lisa. Yeah, so I measured from the brick patio to the top of the fence, and
Oh,
that's
okay.
that's the distance on that tape measure right there.
Okay. And I measured this right in the center, and it was 6'6".
Yeah, I did as well, but my printer ran out of ink as I was printing, so, and of course I didn't have the right cartridge.
Yeah, I'm glad you did it in color, too.
I was in a hurry. I thought you'd be able to read it better if I did it in color. I know how your eyes are.
Yeah.
All right, so,
So I guess I don't have an issue replacing, but it's really
right, it's not,
creating a fence now that's 2 feet taller than what's there.
so I asked Lisa before the meeting started, I said, how are we determining fence height on this one?
Right.
And she said the height of the fence, I guess we determined that it's, you say the lowest point?
Well, it's adjacent grade.
Adjacent grade. But the problem is, so adjacent grade, are we talking about to the west or to the north?
To the east.
The south or to
On
the north?
subject-
No,
subject
west, east or west.
East.
So, The
So,
west is
but
higher,
the
right, 'cause
the
it's
adjacent
going up.
fence, or the adjacent grade,
right.
if I'm looking at the fence from the applicant's, side yard, where am I looking for adjacent grade to measure from?
Right, I would be looking at the east side of the fence, the inside in their lot.
Right, at the ground, but the ground's
Right.
at two different levels, because they've got this step down
Right.
toward the north end of the lot.
Right, and so I would look at that as the fence is on top of the existing retaining wall or,
And so the
stone.
fence height is, this is what we're talking about right here, above the stone.
right, and I
And
would measure
along
it
this
from
grade.
where you measured it in the field, from the brick patio level.
Right,
not
so
from
you
the
measure from
stone.
here
Yeah,
to the top.
Right.
Okay, so from the brick to the top,
Right.
and that's what we're saying is the highest point of the fence, and that's the height. So we say,
Right.
if we're going to grant this request, it would be 8.5 feet from that point right there, not 8.5 feet from
On
the height,
top of-
on
right, not on
top
top
of
of-
the bricks,
right.
like it's shown in their drawing.
Right.
Their drawing shows that the fence is 8.5 feet high on top of the retaining wall, that is at the northern end of the lot.
But by code, they can build
6.5
six,
feet.
6.5.
Right.
So if they're really just replacing,
But 6.5, again, we're measuring from this lower point right here.
Yeah.
So that, if that's 1 foot, then they only get 5.5 feet
yeah,
along the majority of the fence line.
yeah. I know this dimension was 6.5 here.
Right.
I mean, I know it wasn't that tall because I can reach 8 feet. It wasn't even,
No, that's why I went and
Yeah.
measured it once I walked back there, too. Yeah.
How was the 8'6" height chosen?
The landscape architect, I mean, who unfortunately isn't here tonight, so I'm stepping in to play her role right now,
So-
but
The intent for screening, when you talked about that, is really to match the existing,
well, we have, if, there is the neighbor's garage immediately adjacent to the fence, so we would love to be able to buffer what is visible from the Redmond's property to that adjacent property.
so you want the fence to be taller than,
As tall as we could get.
Existing.
Definitely. So, as it's proposed, we have, a 2-foot retaining wall, which then would have the fence sitting on top of it, so.
So I'm looking at the section, the drainage pipe is on the neighbor's property side?
We're set in from our property, so,
1.6, that drainage pipe is on your
right,
property?
yeah,
So the fence is set in
correct,
from the property line.
correct.
And that flows
Around the back of the
down,
house,
down from Sheridan Road, down the, and then
around the back of the property, and then there's a trench drain on the east side of the Redmond's property that then routes back to the driveway.
gravity flow?
So, I mean, we'll get, gravity certainly will help. Everything runs, I guess, towards the lake at that point, so you're definitely going downhill from there.
Lisa, can you build a foundation right on the lot line like that?
Retaining walls are allowed to be a foot from the lot line.
A foot?
And actually, since it's existing, it can be replaced in the same location, yeah.
Okay.
But there isn't one there right now.
Oh, okay, then what is the setback?
Because the only retaining section, or the only wall section that you could see as you walk there is shown in the picture, which is that 1 foot like stone stacked on top of itself. As you move to the south, it's all dirt, and it looks like they ground a tree or a big bush out that was
Yeah,
there as well.
There's a huge tree over
Yeah,
there.
a tree.
But that stone, I'm asking, is retaining the wall, the dirt to the west, right?
Correct.
So that would be a retaining wall that's in place right now.
Right, but it's only about, what we say, 16 feet long, as opposed to 51 feet as they're requesting.
Right, all I'm saying is they can replace the retaining wall where it's at.
So the 16 feet of it, they can replace in place, but the rest of it, it's got to be 1 foot to the east.
Which it is.
That's in the proposal, that's,
That's where it's drawn, right?
So,
So on 1.4,
yeah,
where's the property line relative to this drawing? It doesn't look, I mean, it looks like it's right up against the fence, looks like 6 inches.
right.
I'm not sure which.
So is the
Yeah,
retaining,
The retaining wall is 6 inches from
6
the
inches,
property
right,
line, it looks
yeah.
like.
So that would have to be a foot? Is that correct?
New retaining walls are required to be a foot,
Okay.
yeah.
is it, so I'm, if I'm looking at 1.6, so this is the cross-section, it looks like,
She's 10 inches.
it looks like it's 10 inches.
10 inches from the property line would be the back side of the wall.
Right,
So we would have to be at 12 is,
that's what Lisa's saying. But then the,
that's, I'm sure we can make that happen.
so it's a 2-inch
so-
move.
Right.
And then, so would you be rebuilding that all the way to the northern corner?
Correct,
Right,
correct. Right.
okay.
so Chairman Duffy, I just have a question, just so well, I'm on the same page with you, the way you were looking at this with your photos and your measurements. So there's a 16-foot section, and this is on actually 1.5. So I was hearing your concern that there's the existing retaining wall, and on top of that is going to be the existing fence. So you're 7.5, 7.7, you said, right? So that's the tallest section.
Well, on the
Existing.
drawing, it's showing that on top of that retaining wall, it's going to be 8'6".
Or for the new fence.
Right.
But existing, it's
Existing
7.7
is-
total at the highest.
No, it's 6 foot, what'd you
I
measure?
thought it
Bob?
was 6'6".
And I was
6'6".
somewhere, I measured it at whatever the tape measure.
You know,
there is, yeah.
the soil goes up and down.
You're at seven
Because there's no-
something.
Yeah, you're
But that
at
that
7 some
includes
change.
that includes
The
this
retaining wall.
existing retaining wall.
Right, exactly. So on this plan, 1.5,
Yeah.
we have, they were drawing at 14 feet, where it's potentially going to be 10 feet, 6, about, right? Because we have to measure
Like
the retaining
9'6",
wall.
yeah.
Or 9.6.
Yeah, the retaining wall is roughly a foot, the existing retaining wall.
Right, so 9.6 for the new ask at the highest for 14 feet.
Right.
And the rest of the fence is going to be 8'6". Is that accurate?
Is what we would be proposing, correct?
Okay.
Right.
Mike, why would you count the retaining wall?
Because that
Because
was
it's
my
part of the
question,
height.
because it's part of the height of the fence.
Otherwise, I build a retaining wall, then I put a 6-foot fence on it.
Yeah, why
don't
wouldn't
need
I
a
build
variance, and I would-
Right. Right, why wouldn't I build a
taller
4-foot
fence.
retaining wall with a 6-foot fence, and then I don't have to ask for a variance, but it's 10 feet high? No, it's the height of, it can only be 6.5.
The wall is part of the fence.
Yeah. All right, so, your question is answered, or no?
Yeah, it is. So now I'm looking at it the same way you were describing it. So, and that's the way I thought about it. So,
So the existing height, at its highest point right now, is 7'10", or maybe it was 8 foot until, the top of the fence.
make it 8. It's
Yeah,
right there. I mean,
right.
some of these are rotted, so let's say
Right,
it's,
so
let's say
it was
it's
8 feet at its highest
Right.
point. And now they're asking for 9.5 feet. At that point, that was 8 feet. That's where I get into, it's not they're not replacing what's existing. They're coming in and they're actually asking for an additional variance on top, even though the request continues to say that they're asking for a replacement of existing. Right.
Appears it's furthermore not a replacement because with the addition of the retaining wall, it's not even in the same line as the existing fence.
But they are replacing a fence. I mean, the fence exists, so, right? I mean, I'm not arguing for it, against it, but I'm just saying that since the fence does exist, they are replacing a fence, right? Retaining wall or no retaining wall, they're still replacing a fence, but the numbers are different.
Right.
So if I have a 7-foot retaining wall, I can't put a fence on top? Is that what you're saying?
Not without a variation.
I think the majority of the
Variation should
fence
be granted
is
in
at
that
6'6".
case, I would think.
The existing.
Purpose of
The
the fence.
existing, and we
is
should,
so
if they
don't
want
have to
to,
roll down the retaining wall, right?
rebuild what's
The
existing,
purpose of the
that's what we
fence is
should
what,
grant,
for the
the
baby,
majority.
not
And if
To
that
roll
end that
down the
slopes
retaining
down
wall,
is
I think
14
roll
inches or
down.
12 inches lower, whatever, but the majority of the fence
Still need a fence.
Okay,
is at 6'6".
I understand that, but,
But that's not
But
the
if-
the
but-
situation we have here.
right, that's
I
not the
got that.
situation we have here, right.
Okay, may I interrupt you guys for 1 second? I just spoke with the homeowners, and really their intent is to replace what's there. So while I'll apologize for an error in calculation, I didn't do this drawing, and I'm just here on behalf of them. That's really what our goal is, to replace what's there at the height that it is. So I guess we would still be looking at the 8-foot section or thereabouts at the end
At
where
the
the property
highest
drops
point,
off.
yeah.
And then
And then
working our way back.
6.5.
Right, as it comes
Yeah.
back towards the
We'll call it
south.
6.5, because that's what's existing. All right, so we've got to modify what's here. All right, because now we make this,
Is it
If-
possible to be continued, or do?
Oh,
I mean, is
You
it
could ask,
better
yeah.
for you guys? I mean, it's, yeah. This is
The
Rick Redmond.
request is, well, the height needs to change, but the exhibits then don't match
right.
right now, so.
We could squeeze this in the next meeting, right?
it's all up to you guys. We got 6 cases or 5 cases.
I know, but if you amend your request as we've discussed, I mean, it'll be, are you guys okay?
Think anybody,
Yeah,
I wouldn't have an objection to it amended. I mean,
Right.
as a replacement, we
Well, if you
generally.
don't, I think the rest of us are good.
Mr. Chairman,
Great.
Yes.
Could they request an amendment now to just from 8.5 feet to 6.5?
But then we would have to alter these plans too.
Drawings.
The drawings, because in accordance with the plan submitted is a big part of how we move this forward.
Well, if it is 6.5 feet, they don't need a variance, correct?
But it won't be, because you have to measure from the highest point, and it would be 7.5 feet at that
Lowest
point.
point,
Yeah, right.
Be 7.
Well, I don't know if I'm putting you on the spot, but if the plans get altered, changed, would it be an administrative review at that point? Is it still rise to the level of?
That's a good
Yeah,
point.
if we approved it, if we voted on it tonight and then approved it, say, and then they came back with their modified plans, is that something you just take care of?
If you want to vote on it tonight, then all I would do is ask the applicant to square up the plans based on what we understand is going on and send it on to the village board.
All right.
May I address the board?
Absolutely.
So this is not going to be an inexpensive undertaking for us.
No, it doesn't
because,
look like it.
No.
yeah.
You know, you're putting in a retaining wall, you're putting in underground piping to deflect and properly handle the water. So I don't want to get in a situation where, because there, as you go along that property line, there are variations in height
Yep.
throughout the property line, both on the west side of the fence, because it's coming down, and on the east side. So I don't want to get in a situation where there's a vote on something that later on is disputed
may or may
and
not be
somebody
right.
tells us to rip it out, which I'd rather get a reasonable continuance.
Okay.
I have to say, I'm a lawyer at Holland and Knight, so we represent a lot of the communities along here. I don't want to get involved in a situation where there's a misunderstanding of what's been approved.
Okay.
Construction occurs, and all of a sudden, they tell you to rip it out.
All right, so we're going to continue the case.
But I'd like a short time, because it's spring season.
I understand. So our next meeting, we have 6 cases on the agenda. So we have a real full docket. But if everybody on the board is willing to squeeze this one on as the 7th, because we all believe we're going to be with you when you come back with the drawings and everything, and it should be pretty quick. Everybody's nodding their head, yes? Okay, let's continue this to our
And
next
the other
meeting.
thing I'd be happy to do is, the board members come out to look at the property, if somebody from us can be there so that whatever measurements are taken, everybody's at least agreeing upon the measurements that are being taken.
Yeah, not a problem. I know you haven't moved in, you're doing a lot of work. I drove by today, and there was a guy outside on the phone, and I said, "Oh, are you Mr. Redmond?" And he looks at me and goes, "Uh-huh." I was like, "Oh, is it okay if I walk on your property?" "Well, who are you?" And I told him, he goes, "Oh, I'm not him." All right.
And then you
So,
walked on anyway.
yeah, and I did, yeah. Well, he was. So if there's, I think where we are is, if you're coming back with, it's going to be, 6.5 feet on top of this retaining wall that we're talking about, because you can get to
8 feet.
at the highest point, you can get to 8 feet, which is basically what it was. So,
Right. I mean, I think I understand, I just have to communicate that so that we can graphically represent it, and
Yep.
hopefully we can either draw a string or something where there's a point that we can really see kind of where the ground takes off there for you, so.
we'll be fine.
Yeah.
We're not going to fight you over an inch on the height here. We
Okay.
just want,
Appreciate it.
what started it was we're replacing what's there, and it's not what's there, so that's what started the whole measuring and nitpicking.
Okay. so-
Sorry, but thank you.
Karen, when do you want the revised plan submitted?
Oh, that's a good question. That report is going to go out a week from this Friday, so next Friday. So if we can get something like Wednesday or Thursday next week, that would be great.
A week?
Within a week?
Sure,
Yeah,
no
no,
problem.
A week
fine.
from today.
And then what is the date of the next hearing?
May 16th is the next zoning board date. Is that?
She's there out of town, so
My wife's up at Mayo Clinic for knee surgery on May 16th, but
I'm
Can you
gone.
hit-
No,
you're
I'm
gone
out
too?
of town that week,
Oh.
yeah.
All right.
So,
Okay, so what's the one after that?
That's,
I'm
No,
out
she's
I'm
out,
out of
right.
town, yeah, so.
June 6th. I misspoke at the beginning of the meeting. June 6th is our first meeting in June.
Okay, I guess we have to do it. Yeah, June 6th. then.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right,
All right, thank you.
unless I can get that.
All right, so do I need a motion to continue this?
I do need a motion to
All right.
continue.
I don't know if there's any of the people in the back, if they,
Well, we're making a motion. to-
oh, so we're going to
continuing
continue it,
Yeah,
so
we're
they're not going
continuing,
to
so-
respond now. Okay, got it.
All right, do I have a motion to continue this to June 6th?
So
moved.
All right, Mr. Boyer?
Second.
Question first. If our goal is to move this along quickly at the next meeting, if we do have people who wanted to say something,
Have them say it now, because
we
they're here.
should have them say it now and make sure it doesn't.
Are you interested in speaking during this meeting?
Okay,
Okay.
good. I just didn't want to get into something at
One
the
more
next meeting.
question.
if
One
we
more
have
question.
cases.
If they come back and say that the 1.5, the drawing on 1.5, the 8.6 is changed to 6.6, and then you have a short section, less than 14 feet, that will technically is longer, including the retaining wall, could that not be handled by administrative review at that point? The variation is de minimis?
No,
No,
no.
still
Fence variations need to be heard by the zoning board and the village board.
Right.
Sorry, trying to make it faster
I was
there.
going to say too,
but-
or if that, I guess, if we were to have the stuff submitted that confirmed what we've discussed, I guess, we have to be here. I mean, we've got to present it. Okay, yeah. Just trying to give- Since you've got the date already.
Maybe
and
you
we
get the
just
guy who goes in front of the house today, who said he was Mr. Redmond.
Right, yeah, let Mr. Redmond show up.
Yeah.
Other Mr. Redmond, but,
He didn't even look like you. All right,
Your only child.
The applicants agree that the overall height is not going to be more than 8 feet, and that's something the board wants to support. We could vote on that, and then I just asked them to amend the plan so that it's not more than 8 feet ground to top.
I think everybody's in favor of that.
Okay.
Except that Mr. Redmond is
Okay.
worried about any,
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, no, that's
But
fine.
if staff were to still review it and validate that it's consistent with what we're talking about.
I would, whatever we can do to,
Expedite it.
Move it
Exactly.
along, yeah.
I mean, if you can get somebody to come,
or not.
Can
Why don't you repeat this that I thought I heard?
How, do you trust the landscape architect to present it?
I mean,
At this point.
I mean, we just need to confirm that she would be available, but we could confirm that with you tomorrow.
The other thing we could do is continue you to the 16th, and
Oh, and then,
If you
actually,
find-
why don't we do that? Let's, if we do. have
Continue to the
decision-
16th, and
make
if
it,
it doesn't
then
work, then it
continue
gets
that.
kicked to the
So
6th.
we would,
Yeah,
if no one's able to do
Yeah.
it. So, yeah, that would be great.
all right.
So get her to revise it
Okay.
anyway, so, okay,
All right.
sorry about that.
All right, so
Okay.
we have a motion to continue to the
the
16th.
16th. So
And it's
moved.
seconded.
Seconded.
Boyer's motion, Colling second. All in favor? Aye as well. All right, do I have someone to approve the meetings for zoning board of appeals, Wednesday, April 4th?
So moved.
All right, seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye as well. Microphone is open for public comment. If anybody wants to make a comment, an announcement, a question, seeing nobody rushing to the microphone, I am going to adjourn the meeting.
Okay.
Total info, traffic,